Auburn heads to College Station. Does this game actually mean anything?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into this special crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, host of the SEC Champs, Locked On Auburn, and that is Andrew Stefaniak, host of Locked On Aggies. It's so funny when we saw this game weeks ago, I was like, man, this is going to be important. This is going to be a crucial game. And just over the last 2 weeks, Auburn has done nothing but win, and Texas A&M fell off a little bit, Andrew. I hope I'm not overstepping when I say that. And so now the result of this from the Auburn point of view, Auburn's locked up the conference. They've locked up the number 1 overall seed in the SEC tournament. Some think they've locked up the number 1 overall seed in general in the NCAA tournament. We'll see. A win against A&M on Tuesday certainly would do that. But what's the A&M side of this? Because on Auburn, it's just like, okay, I hope nobody else gets hurt.
Well, Texas A&M's in a spot, and you jokingly said Auburn's done nothing but win the last 2 weeks. Well, Texas A&M has literally done nothing but lose. They have lost their last 4 games. So you're right about that. They've done nothing but lose, and they're in a spot offensively. This team and Auburn fans, because Auburn's had their fair share of struggles with Texas A&M over the last few years. They won last year, but I mean, Buzz has given Bruce problems at times, and Texas A&M is a team, they've always been defense and rebounding. And then the offense is whatever they figure out is what's going to happen. And they're in that case right now. Wade Taylor hasn't shot above 31% in a game in his last 5 games. Zerg Phelps, their number 2 scorer, also kind of in a scoring rut. Right. And they're just in a spot where offensively they can't get anything going. And the defense hasn't been as locked down as it was early in SEC play.
Mm-hmm. Which is, Buzz's whole thing is like, let's just make the product of basketball as ugly and as hard to watch as possible. And Bruce Pearl teams over the last, really ever since he's been here, is if you slow them down and beat them up a little bit, they don't typically know how to respond. Some teams have been able to respond better than others. This year's team can play any type of style you want. That's what we've seen so far. They've played against teams that want to yuck it up and they'll beat you. That's what happened with Tennessee. And then, if you want to run, they'll run with you. Alabama, they swept Ole Miss. And so, to me, you got to think it's going to be the former in this. You got to think if you're Buzz and you're looking at this roster and how they've been playing the last few weeks and all that, it's like you've got to yuck it up. You've got to kind of make it a muddy contest. And you've probably got to lean out over your skis a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think Texas A&M absolutely can win this game because I'm curious to see what kind of Auburn team we get. We haven't really been in this situation from, watching a Bruce Pearl team have the conference locked up with a full week left of action. And so, do you hold guys? There's a lot of talk like Denver Jones probably isn't going to play Tuesday night. He missed a big chunk of the game in the win in Lexington over the weekend. But outside of that, I'm expecting everybody to play. But do you play Johni for 35 minutes? Do you play Chad Baker-Mazar for north of 30 minutes? I don't know. We haven't seen Bruce Pearl operate in this type of situation before.
It will be interesting to watch this ball game. Denver Jones, getting back to the inner workings of this game itself from the Texas A&M perspective, Wade Taylor's a small guard. He is, I like to call it roster 6 foot, right? He's 6 foot tall. He's not 6 foot tall. I don't even know if he's 5'10". I've stood next to him before. Not a big guy.
Wow, smearing at 2 inches. That's a lot.
I'm telling you, he's a little dude. Great player, little dude.
Sure.
And
great heart.
Yes, and great person too. Love Wade Taylor, but Denver Jones would have put him in a blender. Denver Jones, I think, is one of the most underrated defensive guards in college basketball.
Bruce Pearl agrees with you.
Yeah, and he gets hurt against Kentucky. I was watching that. I don't know the extent of that injury, but you're right. I've read he's probably not going to suit up, and there's no reason to, if I'm Auburn, I'm not putting him out there. Right. That I think helps Texas A&M a little bit, just because when the offense is going to come, it's going to come from Wade Taylor. And I think Denver Jones would have made it a long, long evening in Reed Arena for Wade Taylor. So having him not out there, I think that if you're looking as a Texas A&M fan for an advantage the Aggies might have, I think that's got to be somewhere you look and you go, that helps us out here some.
Can I ask you a question about Wade Taylor?
Yep.
So I haven't been able to, I've watched A&M a fair amount.
Yeah.
I'm not able to watch every game, but I've watched them a fair amount when they're on. I try to watch them if Auburn's not playing. When you look at Wade Taylor, you see 15.1 points a game. He's playing over 30 minutes a game, but he's shooting 35.6 from the floor.
Yeah.
Like, what's A&M's view on Wade Taylor? It's like if he's on, we'll win. If he's not, we may not. Like, is that the mentality of A&M right now?
I think it's their mentality on offense in general. It's because they don't. I call Wade Taylor, I have a nickname for him, and it's the possession ends here, because when he gets the ball, the possession ends there. And what's funny, you could call Zurich Phelps that. You could call Manny Obaseki that. There are a lot of Texas A&M players that are deserving of that nickname, the possession ends here, because there isn't offense.
Yeah.
And a lot of fans on my show, or a lot of listeners on my show, Texas A&M fans, when we sit and talk about this basketball team, I'll hear folks just say, well, the defense is great. It is great. But at the end of the day, defense wins championships. I'm in agreement with all that, but you got to have some kind of offense. There's no offense. It's hero ball. It's one person take the ball and see if they can figure something out. And it doesn't work. And that's why I'll be honest with you. I said it on my show today, talking about what happened with Florida with A&M. Mm-hmm. I don't think Texas A&M is going to make a run in March. I don't. I mean, and I've said this before though, when Forrest Kidd, I just don't think they have enough offensive firepower. I think Auburn, and I mean, I hate saying this, I think Auburn can come in without Denver Jones with about 80% effort and win this basketball game. That's how concerned I am with Texas A&M basketball right now and the way they're playing offensively.
I mean, losing 4 straight, the teams that they've lost to, I think, are good. Some people have different opinions on Vandy. I think Vandy's a solid team. Yeah. I don't think they're great. I think they're solid. But losing to Mississippi State and Tennessee, like, nobody, like, okay, that's fine. Losing to Vandy, like, okay, I think A&M's better than Vandy, but I think Vandy's solid. And then losing in Gainesville, okay, like, it's fine. But A&M was expected to be like a top 4 team in the conference, one of those teams with a double bye, and they're just not playing like that right now.
And I mean, you talk about those losses to good teams, and you're right, but you got to remember, this was a Texas A&M team at the time of these losses was a top 10 team.
Right.
And you lose to Mississippi State in Starkville by 16 points.
Yeah.
I think Mississippi State is a hair overrated. I think they're a good basketball team, but they continue to sit at that where they're ranked, and I'm not fully buying it. Texas A&M, they're better than them. And even on the road, that's a game I thought they should have won, ranked 7th.
Yeah.
Tennessee at home, frankly, I think I won't even get into my thoughts on Tennessee. I'm very anti-Tennessee. But
anti-Tennessee is in you don't think they're good or you don't like them?
I don't think they're very good. I don't think they're going to make it deep. For the same reason I don't think Texas A&M makes it deep in March. And it's
Auburn folks are high on Tennessee right now. They helped us. That is true. Lock it up this weekend.
Shout out Meshack for that. Congrats.
What an incredible ending. I mean,
and for a dude who can't shoot, he can't shoot, and he makes that. It was pretty funny.
And the 5-second call. I mean, just what an like crazy stuff. The odds of all that happening were so slim.
Yeah.
But you're right though, and I do think it's worth noting. Like 2 weeks ago, A&M was a top 10 team. I said this a ton of Locked on Auburn and radio shows that I went on, where when we talk about the SEC, it's like it's Auburn, Alabama, and Florida, and then there's Tennessee, and then folks would start listing dark horses like Ole Miss and Mississippi State, and they would just skip over A&M. And at that time, A&M was like 7th or 8th in the country, and it's like we're forgetting about them. And now for all the folks that kind of threw stuff A&M's way, it's like. They've got a chance, though, to right the ship. And so, like, what would that mean? This game means more for Texas A&M and Auburn. What does that mean moving forward? That's next, right here on this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn and Locked on Aggies. Andrew, what's your favorite kind of house?
It's Supply House.
Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades. That's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job right. You want to guess how many parts they have? Over 200,000.
I would have said 100,000. That's
you would have been selling them short.
I know.
They have over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands. You'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need an order or help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. We love that. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Thank you so much for making Locked on Auburn or Locked on Aggies your first listen every single day. Zach Blackerby, Andrew Stefaniak. So we talked about how Auburn's got this locked up, and we'll see what kind of approach Auburn has. I think they're going to come out swinging. I just think that's who this team is. I don't think you change who this team is just because you have stuff locked up. I can't wait to see how Bruce Pearl handles it. But what would a win here mean for Texas A&M? Lost 4 straight, probably lost some confidence in the locker room. What would a win here do? What does this game mean for Texas A&M?
I think you continue, as we talked about, this 4-game losing streak. And it hasn't, and I said a minute ago, not just a 4-game losing streak. It's been a 4-game steamrolled streak, in essence. I mean, nice. And thank you. And now you play the number 1 team in college basketball. And I'll tell you this, I just got done saying Auburn might come with 80%. You know what? If they come with 80% and you beat them, who cares? Texas A&M doesn't care. I could care less, because they're number 1 or number 2 in net and KenPom? I mean, I've seen Duke on top and stuff. So point being,
2 in KenPom. Yep.
And this is my favorite thing in the world, a quad 1 game at home.
Sure.
Because if you lose, it's a quad 1 game. If you win, it's a quad 1 win, a top, 2 quad 1 wins. So it means a lot to Texas A&M, who they were in talks to be a 2 seed 2 weeks ago. I mean, that's how drastic this fall has been. And now you're probably going, can they hang on to a 4 seed? Like, legitimately. So I think if you win this game, Texas A&M probably is a 4 seed. I don't think they've got a shot at a 3 seed. Maybe I'd say 4 seeds realistic. So I think this puts you in a firm spot to land a 4 seed if you win this ball game. So it means a lot to this basketball team.
Who's the guy that would do this for Texas A&M? Who's the guy that helps them pull off this hypothetical upset? Is it Wade Taylor? Is it somebody else?
I mean, and it's a boring answer, but I mean, it probably is. I mean, once again, the dude.
Say somebody else. Say somebody other than Wade Taylor.
Okay. Then a guy that I really like. It's Pharrell Payne, a guy that transferred in, and he's your big man down low, 6'9", 250 pounds, a absolute unit of a human being at 6'9", 250, and he's a guy that has been scoring down low well of late. He's found a way to, and it's gritty baskets, it's angry baskets, it's post moves. He's been scoring that way, and he's heating up. I mean, in his last 5 games, 14 points, 23. In his last 2 games, 14 points, 23. He's been playing better. In the losses to Vandy in Florida, he was pretty darn good. So he's a guy, and then Zurich Phelps is the kind of number 2 guard behind Wade Taylor. Just like Wade Taylor, he's a microwave scorer. If he has a good game, he can give you 35. So those 2 guys would be the X factors outside of Wade Taylor.
Yeah. Curious to see what happens with Auburn's guard rotation. We saw Tahad Pettiford, the star freshman, get more minutes with Denver Jones not being there. And I'm sure, defensively, Chad Baker-Mazara will be defending some of these guys for Texas A&M. We've seen Tahad Pettiford's all or nothing, it seems like, when it comes to scoring. I don't think he's ever a liability, because I think he's a really good passer, and Auburn's offense moves. Yeah. Even when he goes 0 for 4 from the floor, it does seem like the offense is still moving fine when he's on the floor. But when it comes to scoring, it does seem like it kind of comes in waves. And he's been really good away from Neville. So, I mean, I'm expecting a lot from Tahad Pettiford Tuesday night. So I guess from the Auburn point of view, like, Tahad is certainly a guy that I'm looking at. And then also, Bruce kind of hinted at it a little bit. I think it was on the radio call, but like, if Johni plays, the whole like national player of the year thing, I think matters. I think it matters to this team. And so will they give Johni more looks than they might typically? Then you talk about like Pharrell Payne and like that matchup. That could be a big part of this.
Question here. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Saturday affected that for Broome? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, our friends at FanDuel, he was the betting favorite going into Saturday, and now they're tied. When I looked last night, unless they've changed, they were both tied. They had the same exact odds. And I said on another show when we went live Sunday night, if it's tied, I think the player of the year goes to Cooper.
Yeah.
If it's close, it goes to Cooper. So I think Johni needs a solid performance against Texas A&M. And then I think when the world of the eyes of college basketball is watching Auburn and Alabama this Saturday, I think a dominant performance for Broome would go a long way.
Well, I mean, to wrap that conversation into this conversation, we talk about Auburn. Look, what's the motivation, right? Where are they going to try and find motivation in the game that, once again, they've locked it up? They've probably, I heard someone on a broadcast say that they could forfeit these next two and probably be the number one overall seed. So what's the motivation? Well, tonight Broome wants to be player of the year. You know how easily Bruce could use that in recruiting, whether it's to a transfer portal big man, whether it's to a five-star big man,
right.
And say, look what I did with this kid. So yeah, I think
and the guy
motivated.
The center before him was a transfer in the name of Walker Kessler, who was the defensive Naismith Award winner.
Yeah.
And so you could go to any big man in the portal and say, hey, look, we're going to get you to the NBA and we may get you a player of the year honor. So let's go. See, I mean, Bruce Pearl's going to want it too. And I just want to be clear, both for Auburn folks tuning in and Texas A&M folks tuning in, just because you said motivation again, I think this team will be motivated. I don't think this team needs to be playing for something to want to beat the team in front of them. I do think that's the case for a lot of college basketball teams, and I think that's been the case for some Bruce Pearl coach teams. Johni Broome got shaken up at a note against a smaller foe earlier this year, and there was a lot of question of like, okay, would he play against Purdue just a few days later? It was a shoulder injury, and he did. The game didn't really mean anything. Auburn ran Purdue out of the building. They probably could have beaten them handily without Johni Broome, but this is a guy who wanted to be there.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that mentality changing just because you won the SEC, because the goal for this team was much larger than the SEC. So to me, like, I don't think motivation is going to be a problem, but does this game mean more for Texas A&M than it does Auburn? Yeah, I think it does. And so we'll see if that turns into, more production for the Aggies in this one. Let's drop our picks and predictions. What can we expect from this game between the Auburn Tigers and the Texas A&M Aggies? That's next on this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn and Locked on Aggies. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sports book. Can you imagine wagering anywhere other than with our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, Andrew?
I mean, I don't want to live in a world where you could even think about doing that.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I'm with you. Yeah. Hey, right now, new FanDuel customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that $5 bet hits. What's the over-under for Texas A&M on FanDuel for football?
I believe it's 8.5. Is it on that? I checked. I haven't. I believe. What's Auburn's? Speaking of while we're on it,
it is 7.5. Yep.
I believe A&M's 8.5. I'll pull that up actually. But go ahead.
It's 7.5 for A&M as well.
You're kidding. I don't know
7.5 for Texas A&M. So if you're fired up about any of those lines, Auburn fans, Aggies fans, be sure to check that out over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. All right, let's drop our predictions. Yep. Locked on Auburn, Locked on Aggies. I think Auburn wins this game. I think they win by about 10 points, Andrew, on the road. I just think that's who this team is. Yeah. I think they're playing their best basketball. And as we've touched on already in this conversation, I think A&M's playing their worst basketball of the season. Yeah. So I think Auburn wins. I'll say they win, 70-ish to 60-ish is kind of where I'm thinking.
talking about Auburn within this matchup, that's what makes them scary for a team like Texas A&M is they are, what Auburn's, like I said, they're number 1 or 2 in offense on KenPom, and they're like 10 or 11 on defense. So they can hurt you on both ends of the floor. It's a team that any way you want to look at them, they're scary. So Texas A&M, maybe Texas A&M's defense makes Auburn have an uncharacteristic kind of slow game scoring the ball, but then Auburn's defense is going to keep A&M from scoring the ball. I mean, this is going to be I think it's going to be a game where it's going to be a little higher scoring than you think. And A&M's kind of been bleeding points of late. I mean, Florida, another great offensive team, put up 89 on Saturday. So I'm going to take the Auburn Tigers to win. I think Auburn's going to win 76-68.
Okay.
And at home in Reed Arena, I think Auburn's going to pull off.
You're going a little higher scoring than I am.
A little higher, because generally, every time I think a game's going to be mucked up and ugly, it kind of goes 10, 15 points above what I think. So I'm going to take about 10 points above what I would generally predict for this one.
Yeah, and that could just be my perspective of Texas A&M, because that's the way they play every time they play Auburn, which is a strategy, and it's paid off. It's paid off well more times than not. But yeah, it just takes. I think in this game, it's only going to take 1 or 2 guys to get hot. Right now, that's been Miles Kelly. I mean, he was electric against Kentucky and Lexington on Saturday. I think we can expect a lot from Tahad Pettiford. Chad Baker-Mazar is playing good ball. And I just have a hard time seeing us have 2 bad games in a row for Johni Broome. And so
that's fair.
I mean, I think Texas A&M is better than they've been the last 2 weeks. I just think they're kind of trending down, but I don't think that's who they are. I think Texas A&M is a solid basketball team, and I've defended them when a lot of folks were saying they were overrated in the top 10. Was I wrong? Possibly, but I still think what Buzz is doing and what Texas A&M has put together. I think they're a good team. I just think Auburn is a special team right now. It's nothing against Texas A&M.
Yeah. The last little thing I want to bring up about this game, because it is going to play a huge role, is rebounding. Texas A&M is dominant rebounding the basketball, especially on the offensive glass. Okay. And that is a big reason. Now, you could make the argument, well, maybe they're so good because they can't hit a jump shot. Part of it. But on the flip side of it, you watch them. I mean, I've watched A&M play in person, a handful of times. Buzz they're annoying. Auburn fans, you're going to watch them, and Broome's going to come down with the board, and you're going to see 2 A&M players badgering and trying to poke the ball away. They're annoying. They're pesky when it comes to trying to grab those offensive boards. So that's something to monitor. I mean, if Texas A&M has a great day on the offensive boards, and that turns into a lot of layups or an occasional made 3-pointer, that can help A&M. But I mean, that's the one place where I'd really say Auburn needs to watch out, because this team's dominant on the offensive glass.
No, I think that's great info, and that's been an area when Auburn has let folks hang around, or even when they lost to Florida earlier this year. That was a big part of it. That was a big part of it.
Florida and A&M are very similar in that way. They're both great offensive rebounding teams. Problem is, Florida has 3 insanely good guards that A&M does not have.
Yeah, Florida's very good. Florida's a very good team for sure. All right, Andrew, for all the Auburn folks tuning in, how can they check out everything that you've got going on?
Yeah, head on over to Locked On Aggies, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. You'll be seeing a lot of me. We got a big football game coming up between these 2 schools this year. And, of course, if you want to hear more about this basketball game, head over there as well. I appreciate it. And congrats on the championship to y'all.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. For all the Aggies tuning in, you can check out Locked On Auburn. However you're consuming this show, you can consume both of our shows, obviously. So please like the video on our channels. Please subscribe to our channels, and we'll see you next time. This has been a crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Aggies.